Hello and welcome to this episode of Just a Few. My name is Patrick Antoine, your host on this platform, which allows me the opportunity to provide biblical responses to questions from people just like you. If you have a question and you'd like for me to attempt an answer to that question, please feel free to submit it via email. The email address is on the screen. I prefer if you send the question there, and I will try to respond to you as soon as possible. Today's question has to do with the issue of temptation and sin. In fact, it's two questions, so I'm going to be doing two separate videos in response to your question. This video responds to the part of the question that has to do with God and Satan and where does the temptation come from and so on. The second part will do with the distinction between temptation and sin. So it's two issues, so I'm going to do two separate videos to respond to your question. So today's question is, does God test us or tempt us? Good question. I think the best place to start in my response to that is in the New Testament epistle of James. And this is what James says: "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved," notice that term, approved, we'll come back to that, "he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone." He doesn't do it himself, nor does God himself tempt anyone. "But each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his own desires and enticed." That passage says quite a lot, and it tells us where temptation comes from and doesn't come from. I think one of the reasons why some person might ask that question, if God tempts us, is based on the King James Version translation of Genesis 22:1, when Abraham was called upon by God to lay down the life of his son Isaac. So let's read that verse from the King James Version and then from the New King James Version. It says, "And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am." So that version says God did tempt Abraham. So the question arose, is there a contradiction? The New Testament says God doesn't himself tempt anyone. And here it says God tempted Abraham. And if you look at most other updated or modern translations of the English Bible, like the New King James, the New Living Translation, you'll see it says God tested Abraham. So that is what you can call, in the King James Version, a less than ideal, or some people may say an unfortunate translation of the text to give you the impression it's God was tempting Abraham. The New King James says, "Now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham," and so on. And then he went on to tell him about sacrificing Isaac. God tests people. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 13, it speaks about false prophets and how to test them. And even if their prophecy comes to pass or their miraculous signs are manifested, that if they teach you to lead you astray, you're not supposed to follow them. It says in verse 3 of Deuteronomy 13, "You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul." So God tests you. He does not tempt you. So Jesus was tempted. We read about it in the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew. In Matthew it says, Matthew 4:1, "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil." So I'm going to give you two words starting with the letter D. Maybe that will help you to remember them. God tests us while the devil tempts us. And we need to understand what's the objective, and that's where the D words come in. So again, I'll say this first. God tests us while the devil, under God's sovereign purposes, God allows it, the devil brings temptation before us. When God tests us, so test you. His design is to develop, there's that D word, to develop or strengthen areas of your faith to empower you to fulfill his purpose for your life. So when God tests you, it's for development. When Satan tempts you, his objective is to, and here's the other D word, destroy you, thus keeping you from fulfilling God's design for your life. So temptation comes from the devil, the objective to destroy you. Testing comes from God, the objective to develop and strengthen you so that you could be approved, as James 1:12 says, and be used by God to do what he has called you to do. And that's the main distinction between tempting and testing. God tests us to make us approved. The devil tempts us in order to ensnare us in sin. So in a separate video, I'll respond to the question about temptation and its relationship to sin. My name is Patrick Antoine. Thank you for the questions. And until the next time.